Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say, I'm really looking forward to this presentation for two reasons. First, I have a very friendly panel. They're all members of the committee that I'm the chairing on international standard on AI. We're representing the Standard Australia Committee on AI at ISO. And this time, today, I do not need to explain ISO nor the numbering, so that's beautiful. So today, what I want to do for you is a very short snapshot of what are we doing on AI, what our committee in Australia is leading at the international standard on AI, so what's happening there, and what it means for conformity assessment. So just to give you numbers, I think you appreciate that. There's about 28 standards that's been published on AI. There's 34 that are in development. We have currently 64 countries that are involved. And 4 working groups. There's 150 experts around the world. We have effectively liaison with all the international initiative on AI, which is WEF, Partnership of AI. We have the EU Commission that's very much embedded in the ISO conversation. We have also the OECD. So really, it's a truly international initiative. And if you don't know about these standards already today, the one I'm going to talk and focus about is ISO 42001, which is the AI management system standard that effectively allows for the certification of organization using AI. So as you see, the ISO work that we're doing is one of the leading international initiatives, and obviously because of what's happening in the EU, where they have an EU AI Act and they rely on standards to implement them. The work of ISO that's collaborating very strongly with the European standards is taking more relevance. Also, just noting, you may have seen that the government just recently published its guidance, its framework for AI, and they've referred to 3 ISO standards and also to the New South Wales AI Assurance Framework that Ian led. So, the work that we do on AI is very much focused on 3 Ps to actually give you an AI assurance framework. It's focused on the data, the models, but also organizational governance. So, what does this mean effectively for conformity assessment and for your work? So, I'm just going to cover 3 points here. So as we have now published the AI management system standards, there's a lot of work that's being done with Cresce jointly on conformity assessment for AIMS, for our management system. But there's also some works coming up in the pipeline. So that's what I'm going to try to summarize the learning from this nascent work. So the 3 considerations, the first one is we see a shift in what to measure. So in the past, the measurement was focused on performance, like accuracy, robustness. Now we see a shift in this. So we're focusing more on properties to justify the trustworthiness of AI system. So what are those properties? So you've got privacy, transparency, fairness and bias. So these are all measurements that comes in. And what does that mean from a conformity assessment? It means that we need different skills. So conformity assessments become a much more multidisciplinary piece when you look at AI. And that's what we see coming. We have a new standard that's, I hope, will be published this year called ISO 42006 that actually focus on auditors and how effectively auditors, the skills that auditors and certification body will need to have to audit 42001. and multidisciplinary skill is a big part of that. The second learning from our standard and from the conversation we have with Casco is with AI, what's different? It's continuous learning, so continuous validation. So this is extract from ISO 22989, concept and terminology. It gives you the AI lifecycle. You'll see in one of those boxes that it says that if you continuously, if the model is continuously learning, you need to do continuous validation, which is quite a challenge when you're looking at certification, because if the model is constantly changing because it's learning constantly from the data, how do you ensure that that your certification is still valid? So that's a particularly important question that's happening right now. We are looking, for example, at what common criteria scheme and the challenge when we apply them to AI system. At the moment, the short answer, it's not working very well. And the last consideration when it comes to conformity assessment, as AI comes everywhere, all at once, in everything, you have AI in products, in services, as part of the processes. What do you certify? And how do you make sure, if you have many AI systems that interacts, what to certify and the dependency there? So a while back, I worked with a company based in Canada called the Responsible AI Institute. So with that company, they developed a scheme that's actually allowed to certify organization, but also product, services, and processes. And this is a conversation that's coming now at ISO and Casco, where we just look at how can we, once we have 42001, how can we apply it to product and services so that effectively we don't need to go back from scratch again. So this is the start of a solution to address AI and the fact that it comes all at once everywhere in our world. But this is, I'll leave you with this. These are the three considerations that applies to conformity assessment, and that's changing with the world and the technology that is AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurelie. Now we have plenty of time for questions. I'd like to begin by asking all of you, and I don't know, perhaps we'll start from the very end, and then we'll work our way. And my question is, what message has been the strongest for you in these past 2 days, and what message do you as an individual take away from Accreditation 2024?
I think the message that seems to be the theme is that AI is the hot topic of the day. It seems that it's being inserted into every industry and every product, every organization across all sectors are trying to incorporate it somehow, or they see a potential significant benefit to incorporate it. And I think trying to get everybody's heads across that, I think there's a lot of hype involved. It reminds me of I guess the rise of the internet. It's a significant technology. It's very transformative. Everybody wants to use it, but not a lot of people know what it is exactly or how it should be used. They just know they want to be a part of it. And in terms of accreditation, I think that, well, NAD has been around since post-World War II. We've always dealt with new technologies. They get introduced all the time, but the same principles of accreditation still apply. And I believe that accreditation, at least the model that's been developed in Australia, the third-party peer review model, I believe that's held the test of time, and I think that's a good model going forward to dealing with AI or any other new technology that comes along.
Olivier?
Well, I didn't know much about NETA. If you had asked me how this whole thing was working, I would have guessed that there was some kind of back-end business going on to make sure everything was working right. I think those 2 days made me realize how important is this business, and it's really a cornerstone of our society, and that's really what makes me feel safe when I fly or when I use water from the tap, as opposed to living in a different country where all those things can be not that they might not feel as safe as using every day. So I think I live with a much greater understanding of what accreditation is and its importance in our society.
Your turn, Ian.
So it's really wonderful that we're having this conversation as NATA. It's really important because what we've experienced is a couple of hype cycles. I think with generative AI, we've had bang, 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 the hype, the hype, the hype. I think it's starting to settle down. And when it's being taken seriously by NATA, then I think we are starting to get to the realm of something really useful out of AI. Having said that, there's still a lot of work to be done. What Aurelie just presented with the world of standards shows that there's still quite a few big pieces to be built out. So I think the most important lesson for us to take away from this is that this is something that doesn't arrive at a destination. This is something which keeps going, like many other technologies. AI has been around for a long time, but it suddenly got exciting again, and it'll keep getting exciting for quite some time. So the ability to move fast, to build the principled frameworks, and then to accredit against them, I think is something which is really essential to ensure that this everything everywhere all at once, which we're experiencing, becomes much less extraordinary and becomes just the way we safely go about doing things in our lives. So I'm delighted, absolutely delighted that we're having the conversation. But I guess the only other thing I took away is don't ever leave your phone on the stage when there's a comedian who knows how to unlock it.
Yes, well, you see, I had the advantage of not having to look at it. Aurelie, how about you?
For me, it's a very timely conversation. Accreditation, everyone talks about it in the US, in the UK, in Europe. It's very much front of mind. In Europe, there's the EIX coming into force, and the standards that support it and the conformity assessment, they've just got till 2026 to get everything in place. So I can only see the conversation around accreditation of AI system just amplifying. There's one important point. While accreditation, like many things, AI doesn't change the principle. What we're looking at now is a challenge, some are touched upon. So testing of AI system and testing on an ongoing basis is something that we need to find an answer to. And you see many conversation there. I think the first one was NIST in 2018 that did that was pre-Gen AI, just a full 3-day seminar on how do you test for ongoing change in AI system on continuous learning. So I think for this crowd, what's really important now is to start the conversation on AI and see what's actually the change in control and practices that are relevant for us so that we can get those systems out in the world.
Okay, I'm not sure who's best equipped to answer this question, so I'll let you decide. Perhaps Olivier, you could pick up on it. What impact is AI having, do you think, on the energy footprint in terms of something like demand?
Yeah, I think it's a worry that many people have. My feeling is that it's probably transitory. So there is really a race about getting the biggest data set, putting up the biggest model. What we start to see happening is that the performance of the big model starts to plateau a bit. So I'm not sure that it's going to be worth buying the next $500 million computer to get an incremental performance on the next on the GPT-6 or GPT-7. I think OpenAI this year said that their cost of inference is no bigger than the cost of training. So basically, once the model is trained, then you have to run the model on servers and serve all the requests from everybody. So this is their main cost. But a lot of people are trying to get those models more efficient, and there is no race to get those models on microchips. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, it means that every phone, every computer will have a microchip with a language model or able to generate text or to generate images. And when that happens, the cost is going to fall down pretty drastically.
Okay.
That being said, it might be in 6 months or 10 years the next method, and then we start again building big model and lots of data and with, again, another spike in energy demand. So this is a never-ending pursuit towards intelligence, I think. But some of the fear about exponential explosion of energy demand, I think it's overblown.
Ian, you're nodding your head.
I was at an event recently in Singapore talking about the impact in terms of CO2 production of training large language models, and the numbers are always a little rubbery, but to get to 90%, it costs a certain amount of CO2, a certain amount of power. To get to 92% is double, to get to 93% is 8 times, to get to 94%, and so on and so forth. It becomes an exponential challenge. And that's just unacceptable. It's truly unacceptable. It's like we've all been given big pickup trucks and we're driving around releasing lots of CO2 because it's kind of fun and interesting. But at some point, we really need to take responsibility for asking irrelevant questions or asking for party gags or things like that, especially when we begin to get an understanding of what the impact has on the planet in terms of CO2 production. Interestingly, at the same event, they talked about the number of reply all messages. Every email is worth about 25 grams of CO2. The number of reply all emails at a study done in the UK was the equivalent in terms of CO2 production, just people hitting reply all instead of reply to one, to 81,000 flights between London and Granada or London and Seville. And it's really staggering when you think about the collective cost that we have. So I think soon the party will be over. Soon we'll have to be much, much more responsible about the sorts of things we ask of AI, and also the relative budget that any particular question can genuinely consume. If we're asking for an image of something kind of fun and interesting, is it really worth the couple of kilograms of CO2 that it would take to actually generate that? So I think we will definitely find better ways to reduce the energy consumption, but increasingly we need to think about the cost of what is currently quite often frivolous activities and frivolous engagement with AI.
Okay, a question from Sanmarie Schlebusch. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce that correctly. ChatGPT asks, what cultural shifts within organizations are necessary to fully embrace AI, and how can leaders facilitate these changes effectively? Who wants to answer that one? Nick?
I'll take a stab at it. Cultural shifts. A lot of talks this week have been about the interdisciplinary nature of AI. How there's people who come from like law, ethics backgrounds. There's computer scientists. There's chemists. I think that's only going to increase. Like the future workforce is just going to be more interdisciplinary. I think embracing AI is a matter of just embracing change as well. Like gone are the days where you go to university for a program and that's your career for the rest of your life. You leave university now to work in a field that you may not have even experienced before. And 5-10 years from now, that we're going to be having a Accreditation Matters conference about another crazy technology that's transforming everything, and everybody's going to try to figure it out. So I think it's about trying to encourage embracing embracing change in general, and just embracing the fact that as technical professionals, we have to continually learn new things and embrace new things, and just be willing to go outside of our comfort zones. And
Sorry. Did I?
No, that's it.
A question for Aurelie. What impact on Australia are the new EU AI regulations having, or could they have?
So there's many regulations. So we have, the US got many bills, and there's a California law that's coming in place, there's the EU AI Act. So again, everything all at once, all together. At the moment, obviously, it's always about interoperability, so that's where the role of standard is key. How do we make sure that we can get the technology out and it fits within the values and the laws that exist in Australia? So that's where standards are there to build the bridge. So when we want to go to market in the EU, we need to understand those laws, and we need to have a way to actually do the compliance piece there, but also make sure that it fits with all the different jurisdictions. So how do you facilitate that? And again, that's when certification comes in place. The EU, is very famous for its Brussels effect, but I think right now they're finding that maybe with GDPR they caught everyone by surprise and had that Brussels effect. I think this time you see a few of the other jurisdictions that want to have a more balanced view. So at the moment, it's still too early to predict that the EU will have the same effect as the GDPR. There's many more moving pieces, but it is still one of the leading legislative pieces.
Question from James Janison, and Olivier, perhaps you'd like to answer this, and Ian, you jump in if you feel inclined. The question is, how can we make sure standards and conformance tests keep up with the rapid rate of change that we're currently observing with technology? And will standards being developed today become obsolete tomorrow?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I think it's a question that many people have. I think a way to avoid that is not to focus on the technology itself, but to focus on the application. And I think Ian would agree as well, is advocating also to look at the data. So the data is really the fuel of the AI. So if we manage to have a safe and responsible use of data sets, I think it would go a long way to avoid to have those AI systems lose and produce some irresponsible stuff. But I'm convinced that focusing on the domain, application domain, is the way to go. And we know how to do it. The TGA is a perfect example of that. AI has been dreamt. Lots of people were advocating 5 years ago that radiologists would disappear within 5 years. It didn't happen because many people underestimated the difficulty to implement any technology in the medical space because of regulation, because we want it to be safe, because it has to be tested against multiple population and so on. So having those safeguards would allow to free the technology and get innovation going on, while at the same time getting a responsible application.
Ian?
So the one thing we can't do is continue to do things the way we've always done them. So it's now the 21st century. We should really be thinking about standards from a 21st century perspective. We can't allow every standard to take 3 or 4 or even 5 years to come to market. The world is just moving too quickly. So a couple of things are happening. There's an increasing effort towards online standards development, so tools that allow communities around the world to literally author standards using online tools, as opposed to constantly updating a Word document and finally setting that off. That's one. Second one is that Australia, at least Standards Australia, is adopting new ways, alternative pathways of developing standards in rapidly moving areas where there currently is no strong industry body. And there was recently a standard developed, I hate to say it, on hemoglobin or blood plasma products, something that makes me slightly squeamish. But it was developed in a matter of months. There was a need, there was an expert group, there was consultation, but we now have a published standard which took months. But there are other areas where this technology is so complex and moving so quickly that some of what Olivier said about basing it on principles makes very good sense, and then incrementally improving the elements that we need to think about in order to do some of the more detailed work that Aurelie was talking about with the SC42 work. So I think we need to attack it from multiple different perspectives, not just how we do it, but sometimes the pathways through which we build consensus, and in other areas where it really does matter to get the framework right, and it really does matter to get 150 experts from 60 different countries really agreeing. So the slower way, do that increasingly around the principles.
Question for Nick. If I use AI in my accredited lab, what does NATA want me to comply with?
That's a good question. The existing accreditation standards that we use, so 17025, 15189, 17020, and others, they're I heard a good phrase earlier today, technology agnostic. The principles apply whether you're using AI or anything else. You'll still have to comply with those accreditation standards, but there might be more of a focus on requirements like verification and validation, and those principles apply across all of those standards. We would probably treat AI as any other piece of lab kit, instrument, equipment, method. Every time you introduce something new into your lab or a new way of doing things, you have to demonstrate that it's fit for purpose, that it does what it's supposed to do. At the moment, those principles of those existing standards will apply. And there are standards in development about testing and validation of AI systems, and maybe those will be called up in future regulations. But yeah, for the time being, if you're using AI now, those same requirements will apply. So there's nothing necessarily new to comply with.
The emphasis seems to be on AI, which leads me to my next question, which is for you, Aurelie. Are we too dependent on the EU and the United States on supplying the AI model?
There is an unavoidable dependency, but I think the government is, and Stellas through the National AI Centre is developing the capability in Australia, and you see SME increasing. So it's not because it is a matter of fact now that it cannot change. So, and through the work that we do, as I say, helping, and through the work that the National AI Centre does, promoting the skills and the capabilities that CSIRO does on promoting skills and capability around AI, we can actually change that narrative. Noting, I'll say, to adopt AI is not just creating AI startup. It's for everyone to understand AI, like for accreditation to understand AI, for the lawyers, former me, to understand how AI works, for the policymaker, because there's a common narrative here, which is AI is not changing what you do, but it is a tool that's changing how you're doing what you do. So you need to understand what's changing so that you can leverage the principles that you have learned through your career across the many different works that you do to adapt. So that's what's key, and that's how we can change that narrative. And you see in the US, in the EU, there's strong investment to increase for everyone to learn about AI and to adopt it.
Another anonymous question, and actually I'd be interested to have a brief response from all of you on this one. How do we prepare the next generation of young professionals for AI? How about we start at the end and work our way back to me? That means you go off first, Nick.
The next generation. I think The next perfect. I think something similar to what I said before is that AI is becoming an interdisciplinary sort of practice. I think encouraging more collaboration between maybe dissimilar fields would be a good way to encourage developments like that. Like in order to deal with a new technology like AI. It can't just be relegated to people like, computer scientists or people like that. It needs to be a collaboration between just completely disparate disciplines. And I think encouraging that sort of collaboration outside of, your comfort zone or your native competency would do a lot to promote the adoption of AI in an effective way.
Olivier?
Perhaps having fewer scary stories about AI and maybe emphasizing more the benefit and all the potential that this kind of technology can have on the world. I think would go a long way to get people excited about it and to start to get into those topics like math and physics, computer science, and so on that we need.
Ian, with that question in mind, are you encouraged or discouraged at the way the younger generation is accepting and adapting?
So it's the thing about AI is it really is everything everywhere all at once. So I think that's a very, very good comparison. To some extent, it's a bit like the arrival of the internet. In some extent, it's a bit like the arrival of electricity. But both of those took some time to ramp up, whereas we're already all connected, so it's everywhere right now. And so what we've allowed the younger generation to do is spend more time on screens than any of us did, because of the availability of screens, and in some cases the complete lack of availability when we were young. In other cases, and that's led to some pretty interesting behavioural changes, the favourite babysitter is a screen, and that goes to toddlers. And we do that because it works. It pacifies the child, and we don't really have any understanding of the longer-term implications of what that actually does in terms of long-term social behaviours or all sorts of things. But it works in the short term. So in terms of preparation of the younger generation for the arrival, not the arrival, the flood of AI, which literally is everywhere. In every electronic device, there will be AI. In every piece of software, there will be AI. And then there'll be explicit uses of AI for research or for process automation or whatever the case may be, or autonomous vehicles. Thinking about what are the consequences of that, I think are really quite important. Thinking our way through, if we're the frog in the pot and the water's getting a little warmer, where's our thermometer, where's our ladder, where are our instructions for when to get out? So I think it's important for us to think about the outcomes, the impact it has on the real world outcomes. For younger generations to benefit from AI, I think it's really important to think about what we can do. And earlier I was talking about amplify, accelerate, adapt, translate, interpolate, and so on. There are really powerful things that AI can do which generate really powerful benefits and value and jobs and such things. So ultimately, being the master of the tool is really important. Whether that tool is being mastered for the purposes of entertainment or that tool is being mastered for the purposes of science or for industry, being the masters of the tool is really important. So preparing the next generation to be masters of the tool means a basic understanding, the ability to adapt and learn over time, the ability to remain in charge of the tool so the human stays in the loop, and to think about where decisions actually get made and which are the most important decisions that need to be made. And then keeping your eyes open for the downside, keeping your eyes open for the longer term societal and individual impact that repeated application of AI could potentially have.
Now, Aurelie, a question for you, and in the question is a term I hope you understand, because I have no idea what it is. But the question is, with the ubiquity of AI, do you think that all organizations will need to be accredited to ISO 42001 in future?
Yes. If you allow me, I'll still chime just on the question before, because I'd like to say just one thing on this before I jump to this one. I think we don't have to worry about the younger generation. I think the one we need to, because they'll know what AI is, they'll have plenty of course, we'll have figured it out by then. What we need to worry about is the people right now that needs to figure out what level of surveillance, to your point, Ian, what effectively, how our child are allowed to have their attention so as long as possible on screen. So that's the question we need to answer right now, and this are the question for us, not for them. So that's that point. The easier question on 42001, my dream is all the organization will be certified on 42001, so it sets a baseline in the sand. So when 42006 is published, that provides the skills for auditors, yes, I think there'll be, I'd like to see some move in adoption. We'll see already some companies that are leveraging 42001. We see governments that's referring to 42001, so that will help with the procurement process and with the adoption. So I'm very optimistic.
I'd like to finish on an optimistic note. Thank you all for your questions, and thank our panel for their participation. Thank you very much.